Welcome, Sens Talk. Welcome, Sens Talk. My name is Brandon Plant, and I am your host. In today's video, I'm going to take a look at yet another free agent target for your Ottawa Senators. As we all know, the Ottawa Senators, and it was the biggest storyline throughout the year, I would argue, need more goal scoring. They were 30th in the National Hockey League in 5-5 goal scoring. It was the storyline throughout the regular season and at times in the playoffs as well. So, obviously, as we all know, and as many have already reported, the Ottawa Senators are looking to get an upgrade in that top six. Now, it might be through a trade, which we'll talk about it in the very near future in a video. Shout out Jason Robertson. Stay tuned for that video. But also in free agency, which is less than a month away. So on that note, Brock Boeser is one of the top free agent targets for many teams coming on Canada Day on July 1st, free agency day. So the Ottawa Senators certainly would make sense for them to, at the very least, sniff around and take a look at Brock Boeser as a potential option for your Ottawa Senators, as again, they need goal scoring, and more so, they need a top six winger. Claude Giroux's not getting any younger. There's no one in the pipeline, in the prospect pool coming up in the immediate future. You need a guy through free agency or a trade to help bolster our goal scoring. So with that, let's take a look at Brock Boeser and whether or not he is a good fit for your Ottawa Senators. But before we do, I want to say thank you to Dylan Puckniak and Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment for sponsoring Sens Talk, as Sens Talk is proudly presented by Dylan Puckniak, Ottawa's exclusive realtor, with Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment, providing a bilingual real estate service that serves the Ottawa-Gatineau community. Dylan Puckniak is also specialized in supporting professional athletes that come and go in our city, providing a service that takes care of the people at the highest level. For a realtor experience that puts you and your needs first, visit dylanpuckniak.kw.com. That is dylanpuckniak.kw.com to find out more today. Again, thank you to Dylan Puckniak and Keller Williams Sports and Entertainment for sponsoring Sens Talk. So Brock Boeser is a really intriguing guy for a multitude of reasons, which obviously I'm going to cover in the rest of this video. But when you talk about a guy like Brock Boeser, there's some controversy, and it's not because he's a bad guy or anything, or he's a locker room cancer, nothing like that. No, never heard anything like that. The issue is he can't stay healthy. And in the last couple of years, he's only missed a handful of games, so that narrative seems to be dying. But he has, again, never played a full season in the National Hockey League. So the pundits who don't want to bring in Brock Boeser are going to say, he's never played a full season. You can't trust a guy like that. You can't pay a guy big money when he can't play a full season. Fair argument. But then on the flip side, you look at the fact that he's a year removed from scoring 40 goals. Not bad. Scored nearly 30 goals last year. A guy that consistently puts up 20-plus goals, nearly 30 to 40 on average, again, if he's healthy. So you can kind of see both sides. When he's healthy, he's, I wouldn't put him as a top-of-the-echelon superstar, but he's a more than capable top six winger, a star, I would argue, who absolutely can put the puck in the net at least 25 or so times a year. You at least get 30, 25 goals from Brock Boeser. So that's what you're getting in him. But also, you're going to pay a guy big money, he might not be around. So that's the argument around Brock Boeser. Kind of let that simmer in your head as we go along in this video. And I break down the good and the bad when it comes to Brock Boeser, a potential contract extension, and what it would take for him to come to Ottawa, and how he overall would fit here in Ottawa as well. So Brock Boeser in his NHL career has played just under 600 games at 554. He would bring a lot of experience to the Sens locker room, but he's also still young, right? He's not he's not exactly a prospect. He's 28 years old, so he's hitting the prime of his NHL career as well. In his NHL career, 434 total points, 204 of which were goals, as well on the power play, 146. So, roughly a third of his points in the National Hockey League have come on the power play. Kind of see that consistently throughout his stats. If you take a look at his hockey reference page, for example, you will see Brock Boeser always has more points at 5-on-5 than on the power play. Go figure, right? If you're a guy in the top six, oh, what a shock. And you see that continue in this year as well, where 20 of his points this year were on the power play, 50 in total, so 35-on-5 points, 25 goals, while averaging 18-10 on the ice, so basically career average, and playing 75 games. The second most games he's ever played in a National Hockey League season, removed from last year's 81 games. So the last 2 years, he's only missed a handful of games, right? So maybe the injury concerns are in the past, right? So that is something to take into mind as well, especially, again, when you're talking about a guy like Brock Boeser. No one discredits his scoring ability. They just wonder whether or not he can be on the ice. So this is a guy that can absolutely put the puck in the net. But the question really is, would he be a good fit for the Ottawa Senators? I say yes and no. Let me explain. Yes, he would be a good fit on the Ottawa Senators because Ottawa needs more and more and more natural goal scorers and guys that can produce at 5-on-5. Boeser is both. Again, 30 of his 50 points came on the 5-on-5. I took a look at his hockey reference page, and take a look at it after this video as well. It's really interesting. But one of the things that really stuck out to me is usually every single season, a quarter of his production comes from the power play. So this is not a guy that is specifically a power play specialist. He can produce offense even in the 5-on-5 situations. But again, I don't want that to be, you thinking he's a play driver. The advanced analytics don't show that that is the case. He's more so of a guy that knows how to get into the open areas and utilize that electric shot that he has. He has a cannon of a shot, no doubt about that. But again, I don't want that to confuse with the fact that he drives a play. If he's next to a guy like Tim Stützle who drives a play, whether it's me on the line with him or not, he's going to drive that play and create chances because that's what Tim Stützle does. Putting a guy like Brock Boeser next to him will, in my opinion, result in some nice goals, and more so obviously will help the Ottawa Senators and their 5-on-5 scoring situation. Again, Tim Stützle, he needs to shoot the puck more, no doubt about that. He said that already himself in his end-of-season availability. However, he needs a guy that could just put the puck into the back of the net next to him. Brock Boeser could be that guy. Again, he's not a play driver. He's a goal scorer, and that is what Ottawa needs, no doubt about that. And on the power play this year, the Sens are tied for most in the National Hockey League in the regular season. They had 64 power play goals last year. So when you just consider that for a second, you're adding a guy that can even bring that higher. That's great. But also a guy that won't only just be a power play guy. So a two-dimensional scorer in that regard. Now, again, he brings in those scoring abilities, but he also has that experience with head coach Travis Green. And, when you consider the fact that he has that experience with head coach Travis Green, but also has ties to other guys on the bench, like Mike Yeo, Bumgarner, for example. Even his cousin, Dan Boeser, is a scout here in Ottawa. There's a lot of connections that connect him here to Ottawa. And as we all know, a head coach needs to trust their top players. And a manager can take a lot of important information from a coach that coached a player when they're deciding on whether or not they want to sign the guy. So the fact that there's multiple guys on that bench that have firsthand worked with Brock Boeser will help Steve Staios and the management team decide whether or not he's a good fit. So I just wanted to point that out as well because, again, all we know about Brock Boeser are the stats. That's all we know. We don't know how he is in the locker room. We don't know how he is as a person. Travis Green and the rest of the coaching staff basically does. That will help. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, as we all know, when a coach likes a player, he's going to bring that player or at least advocate to the GM to bring that player. Just look at Adam Gaudette last year. And again, not comparing the two, and Matthew Highmore as well, by the way, not comparing Highmore or Gaudette to Brock Boeser, but you get my point. So that is just something to keep in mind. But there also are some other things to keep in mind. Ottawa has an abundance of right-handed forwards right now. Elliot Freeman noted that teams are looking at Ottawa potentially for trade scenarios because they have multiple players that are right-handed and are forwards. You got a guy like Drake Batherson, David Perron, Fabian Zetterlund, Michael Amadio, Claude Giroux. So, and again, Batherson's name has been in the trade rumors, for example, and we'll talk about that in a near future video. Stay tuned for that, probably in the next few days. But just keep that in mind that they might ship out a forward. There might be a vacancy. Again, especially considering the fact that Claude Giroux or Perron are not top 6 guys anymore. Zetterlund could definitely, you can argue, could be in that conversation. But the point is, it looks like a guy in the forward core will be shipped out. Who will it be? I don't know. Is it Batherson? I don't know. Is it Perron Amadio? I don't know. I wouldn't trade Amadio especially. I don't know if any of them go. But if they do, that opens up a hole, more so than they already have, which opens up even more of an opportunity for Brock Boeser to come here in Ottawa. Now I'm going to take a look at some of the drawbacks and why I'm a little concerned about a guy like Brock Boeser. And again, I don't want to be overly critical. This is a great player. But again, we're taking a look at whether or not this makes sense for the Ottawa Senators. And frankly, I'm not convinced it does. And I'm going to explain why right now. The Ottawa Senators, again, if you look at their skating metrics, they're not the slowest team in the National Hockey League. They're much faster than you would think. But Brock Boeser, well, he's not exactly the fastest skater. I will just say that. Look at your screen right now. As you can see, he was below the 50th percentile in all of the skating metrics measured by the National Hockey League Edge system this season. So again, if you're looking for a guy that can keep up with Tim Stützle, as I mentioned earlier in this video, which is exactly what you're looking for when you're spending big bucks in free agency for a goal scorer, I don't know if he's that guy, honestly. Again, he is a guy with an injury history, and that is just the reality. He's a guy with an injury history that, if you look at the puck possession numbers and the Corsi for percentage and everything, all of which are below 50%, he's not a guy that, drives the play, and he's not a guy that can really keep up either. Again, he's not the fastest skater. So those are some drawbacks for me, especially, again, as he hits the prime of his NHL career at 28. He already rejected a 5-year deal with Vancouver. He's looking for 6 to 8 years. I don't know. This might be a situation where he's a fantastic player. I would absolutely consider potentially bringing him in on a 3 to 4 year deal. But if he's looking for 6 to 8 years and he's not getting any faster, obviously, I don't know. That's a reason for concern. But again, on the flip side, as I've already said, this is a guy that scored 40 goals before in the National Hockey League. This is a guy that consistently scores nearly 30 goals. This is a guy that absolutely would help the Ottawa Senators in the short term right now. Not only get more competitive, but would help a guy like Tim Stützle hit that 90-plus point ceiling we all know he can hit. I think he can exceed 90-plus. I think he could go past 100 with the right winger next to him. Brock Boeser could be that guy, but there are reasons to believe that he can't be. And by the way, just take a look at your screen right now, just to kind of give you an idea of the Ottawa Senators and their skating metrics. Again, they're not the fastest team in the National Hockey League by any means, but they certainly are not the slowest either. So again, I think the biggest issue when people talk about the Senators, speed issue is, I don't mean to call out Claude Giroux or David Perron, but those are the two guys in the middle six that don't bring a lot of speed. So if you can bring in a guy that can supplement that, especially in the top six, you're all good. You're fine. But again, bringing in another slow player to replace a slow player in the top six doesn't really seem to make much sense to me, to be honest with you. But moving forward now, back to what I was saying before, in terms of his contract, he already reportedly turned down a $40 million 5-year extension offer from Vancouver, which would have been around $8 million, exactly $8 million, per year for those 5 years. So in free agency, with multiple teams bidding for him, especially teams that went big on a Mitch Marner, for example, who, by the way, the Ottawa Senators are connected to. Maybe I'll have to do a video on that. But with Mitch Marner, again, in free agency, when teams strike out on the biggest thing, they look for the next biggest thing. Brock Boeser absolutely can be one of those guys that benefits from that. So if you already turned out $8 million and reportedly he's looking for 6 to 8 years at roughly, obviously more than $8 million, I would imagine, that kind of locks the Senators out of any chance of getting Brock Boeser. They, after signing Tyler Kleven, have roughly $15 million of cap space. You're going to have to sign Giroux for roughly $3 million, so that's $12 million left. Zetterlund for 2 to 2.5, I would imagine. So now you're at 10 or so. So you're going to put in 80% of your remaining cap for one player for 6 to 8 years? I'm not buying that. I don't see it, especially, again, when you consider the fact AFP Analytics projects his next contract will essentially be $8.5 million for 6 to 8 years. I don't think the Sens will do it, and I personally would not do it. I wouldn't pay a guy that's going to produce likely less than a Tim Stützle or a Brady Tkachuk more than Tim Stützle or Brady Tkachuk. You just don't do it. You don't pay a guy more than those two players unless they are a superstar. And I think Brock Boeser is a star, but he's not a superstar. And I think those two things are very important to distinguish. If you're going to spend more than you're paying on your captain or your franchise center, he's got to be a superstar, and I think Boeser is a fantastic player. I think this is a guy that has scored 40 goals for a reason, but he's not a superstar. He's not a top 15, 20, whatever talent in the National Hockey League, right? That's just the fact. So I wouldn't do it. It just feels like a contract that in the next 2-3 years you could probably live with, but in the next 4 or 5 years, you really won't like it after that, right? So that's a big reason why I would avoid it. But in a scenario where he can't find that long-term deal and kind of finds himself floating around looking for a prove-it deal, right? Like John Klingberg, for example. He tried to get a massive payday in Dallas. Didn't work out for him. Signed a prove-it deal, and then after that kind of figured things out. In that type of scenario, I would sign Brock Boeser for sure for 1 year, $7 to $8 million. A tryout deal. No doubt about that. No risk. But again, I don't see that happening. I don't know why he would do that. And frankly, I don't expect it to get to that point. This is a guy that absolutely is a well-established goal scorer. and in my opinion should have no issue in finding employment come Canada Day on July 1st. So again, we will see what happens. July 1st, free agency day, is a crazy day for guys making a lot of money and guys that are looking for too much money, right? So we shall see what happens. But with that, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Is Brock Boeser a guy that you want to target? Again, he's a guy that absolutely would bring necessary goal scoring. And again, he definitely would be the purest goal scorer on the Ottawa Senators next year if signed. But in the long term, does it work? I don't know. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next few days. Talk soon. Go Sens, go.